Hello, welcome back to my channel where today I'll be taking these old pair of jeans and upcycling them into a new jacket. This is the before. I got these jeans a few years ago and I just never wear them because they're a little bit small and the style isn't really something I like anymore. They're that style of jeans where they're quite tight at the top and then have a little bit of a flare at the bottom. Very cute, just not very me. But I really love this colour and the fabric, so instead of giving them away, I decided to give them a new life as a jacket. Which obviously means we're going to be taking the whole thing apart and putting it back together again. I started out by drawing a little sketch of what I thought I wanted, and I stuck to this for the most part, but it's not quite where I ended up. I also got a pattern from my stash which I thought would work best for this project. Like with all my patterns, this one was created by tracing along the seams of an existing piece of clothing that I like the fit of, and I chose this one for this project because it's based off a hoodie, which means it's a slightly bigger size that will hopefully work well for this jean fabric, which isn't very stretchy or forgiving. And then I could finally get started. Firstly, I took off all the elements of the jeans I wanted to reuse in the new jacket, which I did using a seam ripper. I really like seam rippers. If you're ever doing a sewing project, I would recommend buying a seam ripper. They're so cheap and so small, but they're so much help. But anyway, I took off all these elements because I really like it when upcycling looks like upcycling rather than a fully new piece of clothing. So I really wanted to specifically include elements that would make it look more like a pair of jeans, which to me was the waistband and the pockets. I also took out the zip as this fabric doesn't have much stretch to it, so I knew it would come in handy for putting the jacket on later. Taking away these elements first also meant I had the biggest possible real estate available for cutting out my main panel pieces that will make up the vast majority of this project, and it also completely eliminated the possibility of me accidentally cutting through them by mistake later on. Next, I went on to cutting out all the pieces I needed from the bulk of my fabric. While doing this, I really thought about where the current seams would end up on the jacket in order to create a more professional and intentional result. So for the chest and the back piece, I placed the outer leg seam at the center of the body, and then for the arms I placed the inner leg seam along the top of the arms, and also used the existing rolled hem as the cuff. This also made this part of the process less stressful for me, as once one side had been cut, I knew for certain that I had enough fabric on the other side to finish the project. This did, however, include making the jacket a little bit shorter than I intended it to be, because I didn't quite have enough fabric for the pattern piece that I picked out. So it's going to end up being a little bit more cropped than I expected, but to be honest, I wear much more cropped clothing than I do regular length clothing, so this is actually a good change for me. Seeing the seam at the centre of the finished project really spoke to me. I feel like it's an element that traditionally you'd want to avoid, and instead use a full interrupted panel at the front, but I really like the look of a seam. They just capture my interest so much more and inspire me to create more clothing that does things unintentionally wrong or untraditional. After all, I am making alternative clothing, which by definition is untraditional. Moving on to the cuff details, I decided to add a scallop designs as I just loved the look of them. I did them on a cosplay project and since then I've been obsessed with them. They're not the easiest things to do as they take a lot of patience, especially when sewing all the way along those lines, but they create such a cute little detail which goes with everything, and especially in this colour I just think they look amazing, and they also match the existing stitches on the material, so I feel like they go really well for this project. I almost completely forgot to explain how I actually did this. So to make a scalloped hem, you want to take two pieces of fabric, draw out your design on the wrong side of one of the pieces. For this I cut out a template so I knew the scallops would end up the exact same size. Then you want to sew along that line and cut off the excess fabric specifically at the points where there will be the most tension. Flip the piece inside out and then iron it completely flat. And then for this project I decided to sew a seam along the bottom of it, just so it would match all the existing seams on the fabric. But that's not a compulsory step, it's just an aesthetic choice. It's honestly a very easy process, it's just quite time consuming. Next I went on to adding the pockets back onto the fabric, which for this project went onto the arm and then onto the chest. Realistically, I won't ever use these as real pockets, but like I said before, they're a really nice nod to the fabric's previous life as jeans. And I also think they really add some interest into the large expansive pieces of fabric, and were also such an easy thing to add because all you have to do is follow the existing stitching marks, and then they were all done and finished. Personally, I think these pockets make the piece look more extravagant without having to add lots of bells and whistles because they are functional and simple. I do think I want to add something else to the pockets in the future, like charms, just to make the jacket look a little bit more alternative. But for now, I love how clean these ended up looking, mostly thanks to the fact that I didn't have to cut or iron out the pockets myself. I've done that before and it takes forever. After that, I sewed the zipper onto the back of the shirt up where the collar is, as I wanted to use this to be able to take the shirt off and on. This was really easy because there was already a seam going down the back which I could sew the zipper right onto, and then simply open it with a seam ripper. Honestly, the easiest zip I have ever installed. They can be such a nightmare sometimes. It also ended up looking so nice and clean because the seam was already pre-ironed. I'm definitely going to start ironing my seams for projects going forward. Honestly, I think I've learnt more from this project than I have from making clothing from scratch. I should really start examining professionally made clothing and taking note of why these pieces look more sleek, and then apply all that knowledge to my own pieces. Now onto my favourite part of this project, which was the collar. I just love the idea of making a waistband into the collar, because I don't really have any items of clothing with standing collars, and I always think they look really cute and also go really well with my aesthetic as I usually wear chokers. But anyways, onto the process. I started out by sewing the shoulder seams together so I could put the jacket on and fold the existing collar down to the position where I liked it. Then I used this as a guide as to where to pin and sew the waistband. It was quite an easy process other than the thickness of the fabric, as I did end up breaking a needle, but that's okay as I always have spares on hand. And I just think it came out so cute, and it's by far my favourite element of the jacket. It makes the project feel and look a little bit more unique and personal. It's also just an interesting thing to have on a shirt that not many people have, so I feel like it kind of makes a statement in its own right. Usually I find that the collar is the worst part of any sewing project for me. I just find them really difficult, so I usually just bias bind them to save me the stress. But this is really showing me that I prefer a more dramatic collar that I could make as a standalone piece and then add on to the project later on, rather than something that has to be created in the pattern making process. Just seeing the end result really makes me want to try out so many more different collar styles. With the collar all attached, I could finally attach the sleeves and sew all the way down the arms and down the side seams. This step finally made the jacket wearable. I could have finished the project here, but I did want the bottom hem to have as much interest as the cuffs and the collar, so I went back to sewing. In my initial sketch, I was thinking of having the bottom hem scalloped like I did for the sleeves, but when looking at the remaining fabric, I realised I really liked the look of both the belt loops and the triangular shape that would have been on the back of the jeans, so I decided to use these as is as the hem, which I just flat sewed into place. And I'm so glad I went for this idea, as it makes the whole jacket look like a full pair of jeans, which is exactly what I wanted. I still can't believe I didn't plan to use the belt loops anywhere in my original design when they are so integral to the starting project. I think I forgot about them because I don't use them. I don't think I even own a belt, but I'm so glad I realised their potential rather than doing more scallops. The scallops would have looked really cute, but the loops are just too important to lose. But with that said, this project is finally done and we're ready to see the final result. I am personally so happy with how this turned out, and I really do hope you liked it and liked this video. If you did, please give it a like down below, comment what else you'd like me to do, and subscribe as I post a new video every single week, and I'd love to see you again. But until then, bye!